Today's video was inspired by the amazing K-tuber and even better friend Nabi Kaur. She makes amazing content and I implore you to check out her channel. I will link her channel at the top right corner of your screen or in the description box below. I was highly anticipating IZ*ONE's debut, even though I'm not the biggest fan of K-pop survival shows. I had just come across 101 and their debut song Energetic, which was ridiculously good. And when I say I fell in love with the song, like words cannot even begin to describe it. I know that every once in a while I may joke about Pentagon's lack of everything, but I think it's safe to say that Huey and Wooseok have a special place in my heart because their production and writing for that song was phenomenal. And 101 was just one of the best 4th gen groups on the map at that time. I mean, they were the 3rd boy group in history to ever sell millions of their debut album. They had 99 award nominations and scooped 49 of those. And I'm talking about all this in 1 year. So I think it's safe to say that they were ridiculously successful, even more successful than IOI. IOI, even though relatively successful, they were understandable because they were supposed to be Mnet's experimental group, testing the waters, if you will, to see if this whole making a survival show thing was going to work. With 101, they kind of had their footing on the ground and knew exactly what they were doing. Even though 101's contract was about to end, people still had high anticipation for IZ*ONE, who was supposed to debut a few months before 101's contract eventually came to an end. La Vie en Rose was amazing and I loved everything about it. The only disappointment was that the song was originally meant for CLC, but that's Cube's fault, not IZ*ONE. Their success was amazing. I mean, in the 3 years they ran, they had 74 award nominations. They scooped 24 of those awards. They had 26 music show wins, and they made a shit ton of money that even at their disbandment, Forbes cried about it. Within their first year alone, it was pretty obvious that IZ*ONE would be successful. But Mnet did not want to stop there. They wanted to keep the momentum going, so they introduced Produce X, a survival show with 101 contestants that were going to be fighting to the death. I'm just kidding. But they were going to be fighting for about 10 spots that were supposed to create the group X1. Eventually, 11 people were picked and X1 was on its way to debut, and people once again had high hopes and the anticipation was insane for this boy group to debut. But alas, Mnet is a dumpster fire, and like any dumpster fire, anything and everything they put their hands on turns into a giant pile of hot, stinking garbage. And this is exactly what happened with X1. Before the group even had a chance to debut, they were neck deep into controversy because a good number of the viewers were convinced that some of the votes had been manipulated, especially for the finale. Mnet denied this, but this is Mnet, no one believes them, and it wasn't enough for the almost 300 viewers who pretty much sued Mnet for electoral fraud. Within the next month, Mnet found their doors being knocked down by police officers with warrants that gave them the power to search these offices for proof of voter fraud. Despite all of this, X1 went ahead with their debut. Within the first week, they got their first music show win, and they proceeded to have 10 more music show wins after that. However, their success was going to be short-lived because the following month, the producer of Produce eventually admitted to manipulating the votes for IZ*ONE and X1. This is an interesting case for me because this was Mnet and CJ, E, and M involved in all of this, yet one man was taking the fall, so if you guys want me to cover that, I can do that in another video. The point is, this was a disaster for X1, not only for them, but also for the trainees who had put in their time and effort for a survival show that had already been rigged right from the word go. That must have felt like hell. and of course the fans who had emotionally invested themselves into this group. Mnet was easily the most hated broadcasting network in South Korea, but of course they were outdone by SBS, who dropped Wendy off a 2.5-meter podium and broke her face on Christmas of that year, so there's that. In January of 2021, the companies that were responsible for managing the members of X1 decided to deliberate for an hour and cast a ballot to decide whether X1 should continue as a group. And eventually the decision was that they were going to disband. In just a few months, all their hard work was thrown to shit. All of the money Mnet had planned on this boy group was also thrown to crap, and people, me included, were very upset. Mnet didn't have a choice. They had to sit down and wait out this entire freaking mess, and in the meantime gather out their PR team to figure out what they were going to do next. Because Mnet was not about to give up all that sweet money. Are you kidding? Overworking a bunch of kids temporarily to make millions of dollars? You think they were gonna throw that away? Mnet thought the fuck not. And so their PR team did just about what any other PR team does for a company that they are representing if the company is under public scrutiny. Let's rebrand. And that's exactly what they did. In August of the following year, Mnet decided to give us a brand new version of their law-abiding citizen self. Girls Planet 999. It was gonna be different. It was gonna be fresh. It was gonna be never been done before. Sorry? Oh, it was going to be exactly the same. It was only going to be different for like all the stupid people who believed that it was different. The whole thing about Mnet was that they wanted to test the waters to see, even if people don't forget, but can they forgive? They wanted to put up a new front and milk as much attention as they could from this. And milk attention did they ever. For one, they included Chinese contestants, which is something that had not happened before. There's one. Two of their masters were icons within the industry. 3, their host was one of the most beloved actors in South Korea. 4, contestants who were part of other groups were allowed to perform, including Choi Yoo-jin, a girl who was bringing a decade's worth of work and supporters behind her. And 5, Bahi, girl whose brother was part of one of the most popular 4th-generation boy groups today. I mean, any success and any attention they could get, they got it and they milked it. After Girls Planet officially ended, they now had 9 contestants to work with. These were the girls who were supposed to be showing the new fresh side of Mnet. Except there was one fucking problem. The girls weren't working. I mean, their success was not expected to be massive since everyone and their mother kept saying how Kepler would never be as good as IZ*ONE. So I think it's safe to say that no one expected them to be IZ*ONE. But no one expected them to be, well, them. Because for some crazy reason, growth within this group couldn't be found. And this was weird because this was supposed to be the new, different, innovative group from Mnet. And more importantly, they were supposed to be the unrigged group. Or was that the problem? You see, 3 days before the finale, Mnet decided to release who the top 9 were at that time. The reason Mnet did this is because they were panicking. There was a total of 8 Korean contestants in the top 9 and 1 Chinese member. Not a single Japanese member was there, and we all know that Korea is the wife, but Japan is the side chick. And all their money comes from both of these, and there was no way in hell they were gonna debut a group without Japanese members, and they were freaking the fuck out. So when they released this, everyone and their mother freaked out and decided to go and vote as much as they could for some of their faves who were Japanese and Chinese to also make it into the group. The whole thing was a mess, and a lot of people started saying that, you know what? The rigged versions were so much better because this sucks. The idea that Kepler had not been rigged is probably the reason, according to most people, as to why Kepler is so meh, if you could say. A lot of the times, companies really plan massively ahead when it comes to what their girl groups or boy groups are going to do. I remember EU's Crank film, which was released before Everglow's debut, and one shot actually showed the Pirate title track, which only came out December of last year. So trust and believe when I say these people plan way ahead of time. And because Kepler was, well, not rigged, Mnet did not exactly have the time to plan what they were gonna do with them. But I want to explore that for a little bit, because the idea that Kepler wasn't rigged doesn't sit right with me. Kepler was rigged, just not in the way the other groups were rigged. You see, with other groups, they would manipulate the votes behind the scenes. That was the plan. But this time, they had to be a little more discreet. They had to rely on manipulating the fans' viewpoint of the contestants. Whenever somebody was threatening a position they wanted, aka chiping, they would go out of their way to manipulate that person, make them look so terrible, so that they are dropped so fast by the fan base and they can leave space from whomever they wanted to be in the spotlight. And for those they wanted to be in the group, they shone a lot of spotlight of them, gave them sob stories, Dayon, and went as far as they possibly could to make sure that they got the group they wanted. Only 2 people I am 100% convinced they didn't want in this group are Bahi and Mashiro. But the problem is, I also believe they didn't want Yujin. They probably just wanted her for clout, but she was gonna make it into the group, so they didn't have a choice. So their only option was to make peace with it, because there was no fucking way they were gonna paint this angel to look like a freaking demon to get her out. There was just no way it was gonna happen. Chaibing was a threat. They got rid of her. So was Suruchi. She was a threat. And I also believe that Bora was a member they definitely wanted to make it into the group, but unfortunately that didn't happen. The point I'm trying to make is that they already had planned on the kind of group that they were making. It's not the rigging that's the issue as to why Kepler is a dumpster fire of the group. Actually, it's everything else. Let's start with the concept, because as soon as I found out that this was gonna be yet another space concept, I was like, you are fucked. You wanna go against Luna and Everglow? Are you fucking serious? Everyone and their mother's, sister's, cousin's, brother's grandmother was doing a space concept in the 4th generation. So for them to dive head first with a concept that everyone and their grandmother was doing, by also doing the same damn chanting that everyone in K-pop kept complaining about, this was trouble. It's not that Mnet didn't know what they were doing. Wakwon, should I say, knew exactly what they were doing. The problem is that they overestimated the success that would come with this group. Yes, millions of people watched this, but it's not necessarily because they had their emotional support for this group. It was mainly because they were curious to find out what on earth gave Mnet the audacity to make another survival show. Another thing Mnet did not seem to consider is the fact that there was a lot of people who had become aware of their evil editing, and people could not stop talking about it. And because of some of the emotional investment that people had made in the contestants they wanted to win but didn't, they decided that they were not going to support the group. So there's that. And on top of everything else, they named the group Kepler, which was a fugly name to begin with. The fans are called Keplerians, which God help us all. And on top of everything else, a concept that had been overdone and some people were literally trying to run away from. So how on earth was this group supposed to succeed? And because Wadada did not, well, give them what they expected to get, they decided to do something crazy. They hurled these girls into yet another survival show. Queendom Season 1 was ridiculously successful, and I think it's safe to say that all the groups that were in there walked up with a significant amount of success. Because winning Queendom isn't necessarily the prize. The actual prize of Queendom is the amount of support that you gain when you leave the show. And Season 1 did exactly that for all of the groups. And I also believe that AOA would have been massive here if it was not for Kwon Mina. Thank you for ruining that group for us, you suck. But I will say that a lot of the groups there benefited from being on Queendom. I would say the only person who probably didn't benefit there was Pakbom, for obvious reasons, because I mean her performances were just... The woman is a legend, but like, no. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Queendom Season 2 rolled around, and for reasons beyond everyone's comprehension, Kepler was hurled into Queendom, which didn't make sense. Kepler had literally just left one survival show. They were being hurled into another. All they had was a debut, and that debut hadn't even been promoted well enough. So why were they being thrown into Queendom? The answer? Wakwon had just realized what the fuck they had done, and that this group was not going to be as successful as they hoped it would be, so they yanked them into Queendom. Except there's one problem. Queendom tanked. No, it plummeted. That's what it did. Freaking flopped. It was terrible. And to make it even worse, they finished 5th place, which just, oh my god. So 2 survival shows and they still sucked. So what the fuck was going on? I believe the way that they promoted the group is part of the reason why. I don't think throwing them into Queendom was a good idea. A lot of people were looking forward to Queendom 2 having amazing contestants. People wanted to see groups like Dreamcatcher. People wanted to see Everglow. People wanted to see Momoland. People had high hopes for what season 2 would be like. The lineup, however, was a fucking disaster, and everybody was very upset that Kepler was even there. And even I called them a waste of valuable space. So, needless to say, part of the reason why it tanked was that Queendom was a mistake. Especially if the groups and artists that were going up against were not the ones people were expecting to be on there. So, season 2 of Queendom was a fucking disaster and it did not work out. And that's part of the reason why Kepler doesn't succeed. The other issue is that they cannot rely on a sound. They've had 2 comebacks so far and they've been shifting around in terms of sound. Wadada sounded different from Up sounded ridiculously different from Refresh, and so because they cannot land on a particular sound, it is becoming annoying to be with a group that's jumping all over the place. Wadada received a lot of criticism and people were very upset with it, and everyone kept saying how Mask should have been the debut song, which by the way would have been phenomenal if it was. But Up received a lot of praise. People liked the summerish concept, even though there was a few criticisms here and there. People liked the song a lot more than they did Wadada. So when Refresh rolled around and it was different from what people fell in love with in terms of Up, people started to lose enthusiasm. They keep jumping around in terms of musical sound and it annoys people. People don't like instability. And within a year, if you cannot show them that a group is stable, they are going to get bored and they are going to move on. These are my reasons as to why Kepler is flopping. It's not necessarily because the rigging did not happen. I believe that Kepler was rigged, but it was rigged differently. And because of the lack of focus when it comes to Kepler as a group, styling and outfits, people keep complaining about it all, the lack of proper promotion for the group, and the way that their concept is so oversaturated, people have gotten tired of it. And that's the reason why they're very shifty when it comes to Kepler. Others have even gone as far as to admitting that they were forcing themselves to like the group, even though they didn't, simply because of the amount of hate that the group was getting. So once again, I think Week 1 needs to figure this shit out. You have to turn them into superstars so when they go back, they can find a way to build their careers. And this right now is not a healthy foundation. Some people even have gone as far as to assume that Week 1 doesn't even care and this group is simply a experiment, but there's just one problem. They're pouring money into this group, okay? They have to get money out of it. And there's no way in hell that they are going to waste time by debuting a group for absolutely nothing. This is how I see it. So for those of you who believe that it is because it wasn't rigged, you're more than welcome to believe that. I just believe that it's a shallow reason and there's way more as to why this group is not succeeding. I can't say that I'm surprised that this group is just like tanking. I hope that this following year is better than their first one, because at the end of the day, regardless of how I felt about the final lineup, I want the girls to succeed. I want the girls to have more than they have been given. So yeah, that is it. That is my point of view on this whole situation. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I will see you guys next time. I love you. Bye-bye.
Ding, 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 ding.